This episode is sponsored by David Davies of Sun Life Financial. For all your financial advice needs, call David at 519-660-6798 or email david.davies@sunlife.com. Book your appointment today and get started on achieving your financial goals. And by Nick Davies, Andrea Davies, and their team at Homology Real Estate Group make the buying and selling of real estate as cost-effective, informative, and straightforward as possible while maintaining the highest level of service. If you want to maximize your home's value, call Homology Real Estate Group today. All right, Peter. The last time around we talked, I jokingly said we went baseball, and it was somebody a little bit more in my alley, and so I this time around I said, Pete, we need to get somebody from your perspective and somebody you want to talk to.
Yep.
And the first name that came out of your mouth was Ryan. Can we get a hold of Larry Haylor? And there he is, live from some new digs. He's enjoying life and some new. We'll get to that in a minute. But Larry, first and foremost, the last time I think I got the chance to see you was, press box upstairs at the Mustangs game before everything kind of finished out a year and change ago. I know for me it feels like it was about 10 years ago at this point.
Yeah, isn't that the absolute truth? I mean, the days pass slowly, do they not, in this COVID era? And missing sport. Period. Hockey is on, basketball is on, professional levels, but the absence of the nights, the absence of inter-university sport, is a huge miss from our culture and its enjoyment.
We didn't see 3-down football at all this year.
Not at all.
I love the 3-down game. And, as you know, and I was really upset, quite frankly, by that no CFL, no OUA, nothing.
But Pete, and no one more so than I, but I think they did the responsible thing.
Yeah.
I think they acted with due diligence and try to set an example to say, we're in the midst of this pandemic and this is a serious issue. Let's not go there. I think if we look at our American colleagues, we're really talking about follow the money.
Yeah.
College football is a multi-billion-dollar business. So is the NFL. So is, college and NBA basketball. And you take that out of the financial equation and you've created a huge hole.
Yeah, that's true.
So they're going full speed ahead regardless.
Yeah. So you're predicting it'll be back, OUA and
can't come back fast enough in my mind. Hopefully the trend we're seeing in this downward, graph will continue. And if it does, and there's no third wave or variant wave or whatever we want to call it. I think we will. The thing I'm missing, as we said, chatting before we went on, I've been in Florida the last 10 years. That's what I've been doing. And I learned down there, I don't have to shovel snow. And I hope my golf game gets better. That hasn't happened yet. But I miss golf. And the one thing about golf through the summer was it was one of the few sports or few activities that was open and doable.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was amazingly enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, I hope CFL comes back. I hope the pandemic lets it come back because I missed it. I really did miss the 3-down game.
A huge part of Canadian sporting culture.
Oh, it is. It is. Definitely is. And the Grey Cup is nothing quite like it.
There's not. No, it's the Grey Cup is an event that brings Canadians together from coast to coast. East versus West.
Yeah, and I was just going to tell you, the last Grey Cup I covered was at CNE Stadium, and I sat beside a guy from the Chicago Tribune. He was sent up here for some reason or other, and he was fascinated by 3-down football. When it was all over, I was explaining the differences between our game and their game, the longer field and the 12 men, the extra guy. And some of the little things like the last guy to touch the ball before it goes out of bounds is in control of the ball. But when it was all over, I said, well, what'd you think? He said, well, read it. Go ahead, read it. And there it was in his typewriter. And it was there's a lot to be said for 3-down football. And that's true. And It was between Hamilton and Saskatchewan, by the way.
Yeah. Well, and if you know, I'm sure we watched the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Yeah.
But I think the passing emphasis and the wide open emphasis that has defined the Canadian League is infiltrated the NFL. I mean, 2 years ago, you would never have seen the ratio of, pass to run balancing itself out. In fact, being slanted maybe a little bit more towards the pass than the run.
Yeah.
As it is now.
Yeah, it is.
So the game has opened up in both countries, no question.
What do you think of the game? The Super Bowl?
I didn't think it was super.
You, how many times did you tell me when we had a professional relationship that the game is won on the line of scrimmage? And that was never more evident than on the Super Bowl Sunday when the Tampa Bay defensive unit, they wouldn't let Mahomes execute what he wanted to do. They just they were on him all day long.
There are truisms in all sport, and I was interested after the game listening to the American television panel guys talk about their impressions, and almost without exception, they echoed what you said, Peter, and that is, they dominated the offensive and defensive lines of scrimmage.
Yeah, they did,
and that's where games are won and lost. Mm-hmm. And I was I gotta confess, I was in Michigan for 3 weeks, University of Michigan, when in their spring practice when Brady was there. Uh-huh. He wasn't their quarterback; he was their backup at that time. But I got to stand beside him on the boundary a few times, and I remember my impressions were, "This is a pretty big guy."
Yeah. Oh yeah, he is.
Physically, I mean, he's a big man.
Yeah, he's a big.
But I've never been a big fan, maybe because he's been so good. He doesn't need me cheering for him because he walks on water by himself.
Yeah, he does.
But truthfully, going into this game, making the transition to Tampa Bay, I was kind of cheering for him because, it was a chance for him to stamp an identity on his game.
That's right.
Independent of Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
And I think the two different seasons those teams had speak volumes to the quality of Tom Brady. I mean, he is a difference. And here's the other truism. If you're not good at quarterback in football, it's going to be a long year.
Yeah.
A lot of what goes on hangs on that guy's shoulders.
Yeah, it does.
And as you know, Pete, I used to always say that, that when you lose, the quarterback gets too much of the blame. And when you win, he gets too much of the praise.
Yeah, that's
just how critical he is to the game.
Well, Brady took Tampa Bay Buccaneers, hadn't won a championship. They'd only won once, and that was in 2003. And they hadn't made playoffs since 2007. And he led them. He led them to after a slow start, they rebounded at halftime of the NFL season, and he led them to the Super Bowl, and they won it. They won it going away.
I can use the hockey analogy. Wayne Gretzky in his prime made everyone around him a better player.
Yeah.
Tom Brady elevates the level of players on the field with him.
Yep.
I mean, if you're a receiver playing, for Tampa Bay, you understand if you run a hard route and you're in the progression scheme, if you open, you're going to get the ball.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's right on the net. Right
you
on
understand if you're a running back, Tom Brady, the emphasis that defenses bring to him gives you more opportunities to run the ball with success. And if you're an offensive lineman, you're clearly understanding that if we protect this guy, good things are going to happen.
And they did.
And it does. Yep. And it transfers the other side of the ball too on defense. I mean, and you know what? You could see it in the Super Bowl. And I thought that the confidence of Kansas City's defense went downhill rapidly as Kansas City's offense struggled.
Yep.
They weren't used to that. They were used to being on the field not for a long time because Kansas City's offense is taking care of business and scoring points. When that didn't happen in that game, I thought Kansas City's defense got isolated, and their confidence and their kind of presence began to go away.
You could almost see that, couldn't you, in some of the faces? Here he goes again.
Yeah, right. And Pete, you and I used to always talk about this, and we taught our players. And one of the things I learned is I would say to our players, I want you to watch the posture and the behavior of our opponents as the game goes on. I want you to see what their attitude is and how they're feeling about this game. And if we can get them walking off and on the field, if we can get them coming off the field with their heads down, if we can get kind of their energy levels diminished, it shows in their posture and their attitude. And you could see that in the Super Bowl on campus.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite, I gotta think back, even just a Super Bowl memory for Larry specifically. I think the first time that Larry and I had any interaction outside of me being, a college student, probably asking silly questions after a game at certain points, was back a couple years ago when Marshawn Lynch was expecting the ball in a crucial play, and it ended up being the sports celebrity dinner about 3 days later. I think it was my first year on the committee, and they said you're going to interview all the panel guests. And so I jokingly said to them at one point, I went, "What question do I ask Larry that hasn't been asked before?" And they went, "Oh, you're a sports guy, Ryan. You can come up with something." First thing out of my mouth, "All right, Coach, you're on the 1 yard line. It's about a few seconds left." And my favorite part was just Larry just kind of went, automatically just shook your head and went, "Well, I think we know what everything should have happened."
They had the best running back in the NFL, and they threw the ball.
I remember the question vividly, Ryan. I do. And you said, "What did you think of the call? What would you have done?" And I said, "With hindsight, I'd never thrown it." But I said, even knowing the choices I had available to me, everything said, you got the best red zone running back in the game lined up behind you. You've got at least 2 plays left. Yep. You're going to run one. If you don't get it in from the 1 yard line, you're going to get a timeout. Call some kind of run pass option and get it in on a second down. I mean, it's a play call, is it not, that will live in infamy? Yeah,
it is, and you blame the coach for that. I take it. What's the guy's name out in Seattle?
Pete Carroll.
Carroll. Yeah, it's his fault.
He's called a lot of good ones. So I mean, every once in a while you got a stinker. I know that from tons of experience.
Well, that's the thing. It wasn't like Lynch was hurt or anything. He had like 24 carries or something in that game. It's not like, coming into the game, and some people were making a big deal in this Super Bowl with, Mahomes having and now we know that he's having surgery on his toe and so on and so forth. But it wasn't like he was hurt or something. They decided to not go with what most people thought was the obvious choice. Maybe thinking maybe trickery might be the way to go there.
Yeah, I still don't understand the call. I don't. In fact, they showed it in the Super Bowl. They showed a replay of that particular play because it's so well recognized.
Yeah.
I think it was, I think if you're an NFL coach and you have a team going to the Super Bowl, I don't think you're lacking for a level of confidence in your players. And so I think that if you believe that passing is the way that's going to get it there for us, you're going to go with that instinct. And I think that's kind of what Carroll did. And I think like all coaches who've had that experience, and trust me, we all have, is, looking back, reflection, you kind of saying, why the hell did we do that?
Yeah.
What was our thought process that led us to that? And, we all learn by experience. And I guarantee you that if and when that were ever happen again with Carroll, it'd be a different play call.
I can remember. Do you remember Brady on the bench? They showed him his head was down. He
couldn't believe it.
What do you mean? We got the ball?
Highest vertical jump Tom Brady's ever recorded.
Oh, that was amazing. And then he just
26 inches.
The guy intercepted the pass, and Brady's head came up, and he said, "What? Hey, what? We got the ball."
He gave a little bit of the same kind of reaction on the interception in the end zone in this game, late, when everything was over. It didn't have anywhere near the magnitude of impact.
No.
His joy was obviously observable. Now, you know what? The other thing about Brady is he getting older? Because
he Benjamin Button expects he's getting younger.
Yeah, I mean, the guy doesn't look like he's 43, does he?
No, not to me. And he says he's coming back. Why not? What's this magical age?
He got hit once in a game. You know, I mean, they take good care of him. He takes good care of himself.
Sure.
He's a great decision-making pre and post snap.
Yep.
Hardly ever gets caught with a ball in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
You come after him with pressure, it's out of his hand to the quick early receivers. And he did it in that game on the last drive in the first half when they were coming after him. And, you know, they have a free rusher and he pops it off to the quick receiver, and they got to grab and hold that quick receiver in order to stop the completion.
Yep.
You know, and by the way, I really think Kansas City made a serious tactical strategic error in a timeout with what, 3rd and 1, when Tampa Bay had the ball, with 50 seconds left in the game. And, you know, I mean, let the clock run. I mean, you know, the commentators are saying, oh, they obviously want the ball back. They got it back after Tampa Bay scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
You know, with 6 seconds left in the half. I mean, I thought, and no one went back and visited that. I thought, that's a bad decision.
Yeah.
You got Tom Brady, one of the best quarterbacks ever in the last 2 minutes of a game or a half. And you're going to call timeout in 3rd and 1 and let him preserve, you know, time in which to move the ball should they convert the first down.
Yeah.
In my view, bad decision.
That game alone, but even, you know, I have to look back 2 weeks prior. If you ask any Green Bay Packers fans about letting Tom Brady have a few extra seconds or not putting a play on, and obviously they end up scoring that, getting that touchdown with 30 seconds left in the second quarter, and that was pretty much the game at that point in the championship round.
And you know, in both of those games, the Super Bowl and the Green Bay game, it's interesting how in that last 2 minutes when you got to go the long length of the field, how defenses sit on the shorter completion, thinking about preventing the field goal. We don't want them to get into a field goal field position.
Yep.
And you know, Tampa Bay is running by him deep for the touchdowns. You know, I mean,
there you go.
Good stuff. Really good stuff.
It really was. He just executed perfectly. You couldn't ask for a better execution than Brady pulled off.
Yeah.
Frankly, he didn't have a mark on his jersey or anything. It looked like he just put a new one on at the end of the game because he wasn't touched at all. He didn't hit the ground, didn't do anything. It was just a matter of go out and clean and efficient, I guess.
Yeah.
I thought Mahomes looked like he was not his real self. Now I know that as the game went on and he got beaten up and they didn't protect him well. No. But I even thought at the beginning that there was a certain trepidation in his play that just has never, when I've watched him at least, defined his play. He's always had this incredible. He's like Brady. He's got this great presence on the field. He makes plays under pressure. He does things that you say, how the heck did he get that done?
Yeah.
And this game, he just seemed off his game, which I guess says to the point, you know what? There's nothing quite like taking away the run and being able to rush the passer.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take away the run so that the whole defense is playing downhill to the ball, and you can tee off of those front four with just pass rush emphasis and get pressure on the passer, you take that quarterback out of his timing, his rhythm, his timing throws.
Yep.
Even the very best quarterbacks in the world struggle.
Well, get back to the O-line of Kansas City. Their 2 tackles, their 2 starting tackles were both hurt. And Dr. Laurent Duvernay-Tardif from Montreal.
Isn't that a great story?
I think it's football is fine, and he won himself a championship the year before, but his calling is medicine. Yeah. And I certainly stood in his corner for the decision that he made to treat the sick in Montreal.
Yeah, you can't. You just. I'm in awe of what he did. It is remarkable. A tribute to a young man.
Yep. He's going to, long after football is over, he's going to be working with the sick, and he answered his calling. Answered his calling.
Yeah.
Well, it says something to him, though. Obviously, the Sports Illustrated giving him recognition this year among his kind of the sports people of the year kind of thing, to kind of, because as you say, I know a couple people kind of, I don't want to say made the argument, but they were kind of like, well, he didn't play much this year, and is it a sports award? And I was like, well, he's still did win the Super Bowl in the early part of the calendar year. And well, then he went on and, did an extremely, humanitarian element and, decided to not play football so he could, as you say, Pete, and to kind of go to his calling kind of thing.
He answered the call.
But to me, that's also, and Larry, you would know this better than most, especially, dealing with student athletes and, and people who are, sometimes people don't realize exactly how great people these players are.
Yeah.
They it's very much, and I know I got the chance, working with the Mustangs for a couple of years there to get to know, some of the players and stuff like that. And that was the big thing that I always took away from pretty much all student athletes is, there's the element of the sport element of, whether you're, Chris Merchant throwing football, throwing passes. And obviously I got to know Chris pretty well, as you did as well. And, over the years, but it's just it's the people and kind of the hearts that they have in them and that kind of thing that sometimes I think maybe doesn't get the attention that they deserve, kind of thing, especially in university sports. Professional sports, sometimes it's kind of built into contracts. You have to make a certain number of appearances and so on and so forth. But I know that's something that both you and Greg Marshall have kind of instilled in all your players, sort of thing, that community involvement and kind of having a purpose beyond just the field kind of thing.
Yeah, and we always used to say that the character counts big, and it counts big on and off the field. It transfers onto the field from off of the field. We used to always have a saying in our locker room about recruiting. We said, "We'll recruit character, but not characters." And
well, you had a couple characters.
Yeah, but you had some medical students in your club.
Well, hey, one of the very best, right? Ned Amendola.
Yeah.
I mean, Dr. Ned. I was going to say to you that we had a Zoom call. Oh, I guess about 2 months ago, with our 76 team, and there were about 45 of us on the Zoom call, and as you 76. So how many years have gone by? And so now you're talking not to, the student athlete doing their thing in an academic setting. Now you're talking about men who've gone on and, 40 years later, here they are. Where are they? What are they doing? And it was remarkable seeing those men and just seeing their lives after football.
Yeah.
And how it seemed to be so directly related to the kind of character and the kinds of people that they were as student athletes at our place.
Yeah.
And, we've always argued. I'm an educator. I was an educator, and I taught football. It's one of the things I taught. And a whole ton of the lessons that I taught in football were about life. We're about critical things. And when I get the chance to talk to athletes that I've coached 30 years ago, the common theme that comes up is how often they've used things that were taught to them in their football experience at Western in their real life.
Yeah.
How they didn't know it then, but they've come to understand it now, and how critically important it's been to them as they've gone through their lives. So as an educator, I'm a huge, and athletic programs missing in schools this year, not in universities. I think involvement in competitive sport, in sport, is one of the greatest educational tools that we have at our disposal. And when it's not there, there's a huge void in that umbrella of education.
Yeah, it must do you a great. You must feel very good about that Zoom call you had.
Yeah,
these guys that you coached for a while.
Yeah.
Now and here they are later in life, and they all say the same thing, and that their training at Western got them to where they are, or helped get them to where they are.
No, you're exactly right. And I'd mentioned Ned Amendola. Ned, would come to games having been on call all night, and he would come having not slept for 36 hours, and never made an excuse, never used as a rationale for anything whatsoever. It was a part of who he was and what he did.
Yep.
And today, Ned Amendola is director of sport orthopedic medicine at Duke University.
At Duke, eh? Yep.
So, you're talking about an incredibly elite man who has humility associated with him that is almost unbelievable. And, we've got so many people, and I think all universities, all high schools do, that you have incredible pride having been associated with. Yeah. I mean, they're the best of the best. And I can remember after a Vanier Cup win one time, I was on national television, and we'd just gone through a plebiscite about, East versus West, and, the Quebec leaving Confederation and separating, and they voted against that. And I said, you know what? I watched the young men on the field, on Saturday, and I'm highly confident in the future. This country is really in good hands.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So Larry, for those who've known you over the years, sort of thing, and I'll probably just sit back for the next 20 minutes and let you and Pete stories from over the years. So I jokingly said to Pete, I'm like, my favorite podcasts we have done and are going to do are the ones where I get the hell out of the way and just let the stories flow back and forth. Because you mentioned even before we started, you just said, Pete, when are you writing the book? And he, there's too much going on. I've talked to people and stuff like that. And my response was that, well, that's why we started a podcast, so we can make sure we get some of those stories situated. So I'll start out the story realm, and then, as I say, sit over here happily enjoying hearing stories as I usually do. For you mentioned how much you obviously you have love for the university and the game and everything like that. Take us through when the offer, the decision, everything to come to be part of the Mustang family and kind of take over the program, and then see it to obviously so many years of great success, sort of thing. Take us through that, the first part of when you came to Western, and then I'll let Pete take over, because it'll probably be about 5 minutes after that would be when he started calling you and bugging you nonstop.
Yeah, well, my on-air buddy Tom McConnell always teases me about being at Western when they first blew up the ball. So this could be a long story. I was at the University of Saskatchewan, where I'd done my graduate work, and I was heading off to Berkeley to do my PhD, and I got a call from Doug Hargraves, who was a longtime head coach at Queens, but he was at Dalhousie then as the head coach and athletic director. And he wanted me to come down to Dal and be a faculty member there and coach football there. And so we made that journey down. And interestingly, Judy and I, my wife, drove through London, and we stopped at a great colleague friend of mine, Bert Caron, who, God bless his soul, is as good a person as there was. He taught at Western. He was a sports psychologist, and we visited him with him in his home and stayed with him for a few days before we journeyed on to Halifax. When I came back from Halifax to Dalhousie in 75, I came. We ultimately, after being here for 6 years, we moved into his house. He sold his house to us, and we had as our home the home that we had visited on our way through to Halifax on that journey there. So I came here in 75, and Frank Cosentino had been the head coach. Darwin had been appointed the head coach, and they were looking for an offensive coordinator. And I lucked out at Dalhousie in helping them become a better offensive football team. And Doug Hargraves was a great supporter of mine and had nothing but good things to say about me, which I'm forever grateful for.
Yeah, but that was
Bert Caron was here at Western as a faculty member then, and he was my advocate. He was in my corner. He was a big supporter of me. I'd been a student of his and coached with him at Saskatchewan, and I was offered the job here. And I came in 75, and I was an assistant coach here with Darwin for 9 years. I learned an enormous amount. One of the things I learned as much or perhaps more than anything was about Western, what it is, what it represents, the people that have graced this place, and the legacies that those people have left behind, and the expectation of people who follow after. And I know coming to this football program, I felt a huge sense of responsibility to carry the flag a little further up the hill, and do my very best to help make things as good or better than it was, which is an enormous task when you think about the history of Western football. When Darwin decided to, move out of the head coaching position, and by the way, I'd had a couple of offers to leave and go elsewhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some nice offers.
I would be remiss in my journalistic background if I didn't ask where.
Well, one of them was at the University of Toronto, and the other one was at my alma mater, the University of Saskatchewan, back in
yeah.
Saskatoon. And I so much liked London, and I so much liked, the University of Western Ontario and its athletic program, and the great integration that Western had then, and just in terms of academics and athletics. It's easy to say student athletes. It's another thing to realize it, and actually have athletes who are, serious students. There are some good examples of that we won't talk about. But when Darwin decided to move into the athletic director's position, I was one of the candidates, and I was fortunate to be chosen. And I can remember my first game in Little Stadium, and a sort of trepidation I felt about, man, am I ready for this? Am I, this? I got some big shoes here that I'm trying to put on and tighten up. And I think it was about 2/3 of the way through that game, and I got this sense of ease. I got this sense of it's going to be okay. I'm going to be able to manage this. And I was there as a head coach for 22 years, and the great thing about my experience there is I was surrounded by coaches, administrators who, as I've said to my coaches many times, man, I've had experiences off the field, nowadays through the years that fill a lifetime in terms of the meaning they have for me and my family. And, I just can't quite, put aside how much the University of Western Ontario, has meant to me in terms of, my life and my experience. My family grew up within, Mustang sport. Both of my sons played Mustang football. My daughter was a great basketball player at the University of Western Ontario. And they were within the family of Mustang football.
Yeah. Oh,
and they could not have been better served. They could not have been better served.
Jordan was the quarterback, the little chip off the old block. Yeah.
Well, he was better than me.
I knew you'd say that.
Don't tell anyone that. I always say one of the best things about coaching at Western is I could lie about how good I was at Saskatchewan because they're so far away. No one will ever find out.
Did Brian Cowris replace you as the winningest coach in the Canadian college ball?
Good man.
Yeah,
really
he's a good guy. He's out at USask, isn't he?
University of Saskatchewan. So I've said to Brian a couple of times, Brian, it's really cool that two old guys from Saskatchewan can be the two guys and wins in CISS football.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing, and I'm sure Larry, being the color commentator and expert of all things when it comes to Mustangs football, is I'm sure that you're aware that Mr. Marshall, in an overall coaching record, is 2 behind you in wins.
Oh, is he really?
I didn't know
thank God they canceled the season.
Hey.
157, 45, and 2 as an overall in U Sport football. He's 114 and 27 at Western, though. So you've got him at the Western total. But if U Sports numbers are serving me correctly, it was 167 or 169, 46, and 3 for yourself, sort of thing. So I know, anytime anytime you say something about numbers to Greg, he goes, leave it alone. I don't care. Usually it's about the kids.
Right? Honestly, it's true. You don't. And I don't think you do until 5 years after you're no longer doing what it is you've done.
Yeah.
And you reflect on it, or people ask of it, and you begin to realize it. I'm going to take some of the credit for Greg. I mean, when Greg was the Ticats, and they made the silly decision not to have him remain as their head coach, I immediately got a hold of him, and my sense was it was time for me. I didn't want to linger. Let me put it this way. And I always promised our football team, I said, when my enthusiasm and my energy and my adrenaline for the game diminishes, I said, I'm hanging my shoes up. Until I if I can remain the hardest working person in our group, I'm good. But I was finding that harder and harder to do. And truthfully, I thought it was time for me. And I talked to Greg. And I think one of the things that every coach hopes for is to have someone replace them who builds the program to an even higher point. And that was my aspiration in having Greg come in and take over the reins. And I think he's clearly done that. And then a challenge, of course, for him is who's next? Who's next in this line? And because Pete, one of the things that you clearly know is, man, like most football programs, even the U Sport, CIS sports schools, they have multiplicity of coaches over the 100 years of their being. Western's unique.
Yeah.
And it had so few.
Yeah.
So few.
Metris, Cosentino, Darwin, you, and Greg.
Right.
That's a long time.
It's remarkable, the longevity that all of those coaches have had. And it speaks volumes to what I was trying to say earlier about Western being a destination, not a stop along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And you talk about your guys. Look, and we were talking about Dr. Duvernay Tardif in Montreal. You had some pretty good doctors handling your kids. You had Jack Kennedy to begin with, and Pete Fowler, and then Ned came along, and I mean, holy cow! Well, you talk about being in good hands.
In good hands, and what a fabulous statement of excellence in orthopedics. And excellence in athletics. So
Jack was a player
looking after our athletes, and I mean our athletes were blessed to have people like Doc Kennedy and Peter Fowler and Ned Amendola and a whole host of exceptional medical people practicing on their behalf.
Right.
And I mean, anyone who's had any experience in the Fowler Kennedy Sport Medicine Clinic knows wherever we speak.
Jack Kennedy was a player. He was a Mustang himself before my time.
Pete Fowler was an Olympic swimmer.
Yes, he was.
And both those guys. Here's don't tell Pete. You know what? Thing about them, boy, they are both competitors.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they like to compete, and I think probably Peter Fowler would tell you that there was no one more intense on the boundary than Jack Kennedy.
I know that when he was with Buffalo. He was with the Buffalo Bills.
You probably know a whole bunch of stories about it.
They threw a flag on him once, the referee, for his excitement, his enthusiasm, his mouth got him into a 15-yard penalty.
And let me tell you something. When things weren't going the way we would hope they would go, I always had this voice in my ear. It was Jack.
It would be Jack, all right.
He wasn't adverse at all to kind of let me know what needed to be done. So I knew if I didn't hear from him, things were okay.
Things were going pretty good, yeah. Oh, they were great fellas too, just wore purple underwear to the school, to the game.
Yeah.
They just did
exactly
purple and white.
I thought that was in the contract somewhere that you had to do that. That's what they
do. You, Ryan? Now
I read it somewhere incorrectly, apparently.
Okay.
I would be, Larry, you're no stranger to the microphone. And for those, you mentioned Tom McConnell, you and Tom doing the games on radio, but I have to ask you about you and my partner here, doing your own show back in the day. Pete has spoke glowingly of something called the Mustang Report, which I told him at some point, if university sports continues, and I'm so lucky to help out in any way as I have before, it's something that is kind of, to me, kind of says exactly what you guys were doing with that show. What is it about that? What did you have fun with that? Because I know you and Pete would get together, and it was some must watch TV in the city.
I wrote down every play on the game, every play. And then immediately after the game, when Larry was finished in the dressing room, then he'd come out to our truck and decide what play we were going to use. And that was only the beginning of the show. We had to go back and give it to the producer. He'd use this play, this play, this play, this play. And the producer had to find it. And he spent overnight editing, because we did the show, we recorded it on a Sunday, and he'd have to go, and the game was Saturday. He'd have to go back and edit that overnight Saturday and into Sunday morning. And then we'd record Sunday.
I thought it was a great promotion of university sport.
Yeah, it was.
Professionally done program. I mean, great crew, in the studio. Great visuals.
Yep. They did
great
it right.
thing. I'll tell you the great thing about it. If you look at the, I was going to say about Pete, a man who knows the game and saw the game and understands the game, talking about the game. I mean, it's a whole bunch easier when that's the case. And if you look at the great sport journalists who have come through the University of Western Ontario, it's remarkable.
Yeah, Elliot Friedman.
Yeah, and I always would say to Elliot, I'd say, the thing I like about you, Elliot, you do your homework. You're not coming here shooting blanks in the air.
No.
You got one or two things you want to talk about. They're specific. You've thought about them. You've researched them, and here's the question you bring in. It's a good one. I may not have a very good answer, but it's a great question.
Yeah. He was like Dan Shulman.
Is he knew the game.
Yeah.
And so that's what I like about. That's what I've always liked about good sport journalists, is they understand the game.
Yeah.
They know it's played by humans who have frailties,
mm-hmm.
who make mistakes, who do many times the wrong thing. But they love the game.
Yeah.
And when they cover and they write from a positive perspective about the event, good, bad, and ugly. You know, and again, many of the people in the London media were huge advocates of sport at Western, and people like Elliot and Pete and many others.
Bob Gage.
Bob Gage. Well, that's why I asked you about the book. I always say to Bob Gage, I say, Gager, you're like the African storyteller. You're coming in, and all these people are waiting for you to tell these stories. You are that person. And Pete, you've got a million of those things. I've got something. Maybe we should co-author a book.
Yeah, maybe we'll get together and do one.
Yeah, truth and fiction. I'll do the fiction. You can do the truth.
I'll do the truth.
I'll show up and set up the recorder. So
there you go.
Yeah, but
well, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed every minute of Mustang football, and the only thing I didn't like about it was too short a season.
Yeah,
you started in September and you were finished by the end of November, and usually your club was going well into November, but the regular season was only a couple of months. And then
one of the things as I talk about my journey to Western, I remember my first game at Western as a coach. And I remember coming out of the locker room and going onto the field like 45 minutes before kickoff. And the student side was full. Yeah. And they were struggling to get more people in there. And I'm looking around, and the alumni stands are filling up 40 minutes before the game. And I'm thinking, where the hell have I landed? Like, my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
To have this kind of support and enthusiasm for this product that we're putting on this field.
Well,
and those were the good old days, Pete, because we're struggling with that right now.
Yeah.
In our tumultuous times, the kind of the unity and the culture of sport, university sport in particular. Gosh, Pete, we'd show those films on Mustang Report, and that student side was packed to overflowing.
Yeah, it was.
Alumni side, you couldn't get a seat.
No.
And I would always call our team together at the start of homecoming game, and people are up on the hill and the trees are filled with people
Yeah.
your feet above, looking down. And I'd get the team around me, and I'd say, okay, I said, I want you to look around. I said, just look around this place. I said, now tell me, where would you rather be today than right here, right now?
Wearing purple.
And I can tell you for a fact that I know full well that Mr. Marshall carries on that exact same message for homecoming, because he said he always the last couple years I've had players say to me, nothing quite like being a Mustang on homecoming weekend.
No, there isn't. No, there isn't.
No, exactly. It's the legacy.
The calls I used to get at the radio station or the TV station about where can I get a couple of tickets. Come on.
That's why I was getting all those calls, Pete.
Oh yeah, that's why you were getting them. No, I couldn't. You just couldn't get a ticket.
Pete was doing them to you.
It was one, and we go to Queens, and it was very similar.
Same thing.
Go to Toronto, and they had great crowds. I hope that the powers that be at the university level across Ontario and beyond can collectively find ways to reinvigorate that culture.
Yeah.
To get it going again. I mean, the one thing in Florida, when we're there in the wintertime, I'm always amazed. I mean, they love the fact that I'm an ex-football coach, and they want to talk football. The one thing I'm always amazed is the incredible loyalty that American university graduates have to their schools, to their football programs.
Yeah.
It's game day in Florida. Michigan and Ohio State are playing. Everyone's got the colors on, Mm-hmm. I mean, I revel in that kind of stuff.
That's what makes university athletics the success that it is. Johnny Metris used to
George Peterson said to me, our ex-president of our university said to me one time, he said, you know what? He said, as I go around the world, he said, meeting with alumni wherever around this globe, he said, the question I get most asked is, how the Mustangs do?
Yep.
I don't know. How the Mustangs?
I've heard that from so many people. How are the Mustangs doing? And Johnny Metris, going back to the crowds, Johnny Metris always told me that the one thing that they should never have done was kick booze out of the stadium. The kids want to celebrate on Saturday at the stadium with the wineskin full of wine.
Wineskins.
A wineskin.
And the searching of people, and I know that one homecoming we had Ford sponsoring the game, and they searched the Ford executives, which didn't leave an incredibly positive impression. But they were more relaxed times, no question.
Yeah,
less
they were
around legality.
Yeah,
but certainly, passing people up the stands, the cheers that went on before the kickoff, the frats kind of competing with one another, musical groups playing in the stadium pre and halftime. I mean, it was, I guess, again, I could say fortunate to this point in time, at least it was a time of great glory in university football.
Yeah.
Here's the one question, and I want to throw this out to both of you. Now that we've gone through a time where, we've talked about times when the stadium was full and people were calling Pete to try and get tickets and so on and so forth, to now, it's still a pretty good crowd at TD Stadium on a Saturday, more so one side of the field than the other. Do we foresee, obviously, when we get to a situation when people can be together and so on and so forth? For me, I've kind of said, especially on the university sports side of things, do you think that all of a sudden it'll put that little bit more, maybe, as a combination of, the administrative side, putting some planning into it, but do you expect to maybe see a scenario where people really just want to go to a football game on a Saturday or a volleyball game on a Sunday afternoon or something like that, now that people know what it's like not to have that opportunity, now that interchange of personalities and school spirit and that kind of thing. Go to you first, Larry. I know you're in the press box. You're seeing that kind of that crowd situation. We see a pretty good chunk of people show up for the kickoff game. There might be another good chunk of people at homecoming, but there's only 4 home games sort of thing. Do you expect to see a scenario or hope to see a situation where, you know, those bodies start coming back to re-engage with that aspect of, you know, the importance and the kind of camaraderie of being out to, you know, a Mustang football game on a weekend kind of thing?
Yeah, I obviously I really hope that becomes the case, and I think it involves a lot of different players, and by that I mean not football players, but you know, I think the university has become very concerned with understandably around homecoming, and even the first year orientation week. It used to be, you know, here I go back in the day, you know, gosh, in my time, oh man. But it used to be that the football game on orientation week was the focal point, so that every residence would come in trooping their colors.
Yeah, they would
to the stadium, and they would get into that stadium, that student side of the stadium, and they would have contests. They'd have tug of wars. They'd have races. They'd have, you know, anything that would pit one residence against the other residence. They'd do their cheers, and they'd watch the football game. And for a lot of those people, they had never seen a university football game before, and certainly they had never seen the team from their university play before. So now they're in that environment, and it's exciting, it's fun.
Yep.
They're enjoying it, and they're coming back when it's not mandated, because it's a good time, it's enjoyment. And as they come back, they begin to understand, hey, we're Western. Mm-hmm. That's our team out there competing on our behalf. That's us. Let's go. Let's play. Let's get this done. And you know, the university administration needs to buy into that. They need to understand the place of athletics in the hierarchy of the university. And you know, as I said, George Peterson saying, I get asked most frequently, how are the Mustangs doing?
Yeah. It's
incredibly important, and many people don't know this, how well the sport programs do to alumni across the country and around the world. You know, there are not a lot of alumni who would say, and excuse me here, I'm not trying to denigrate anyone, who would say, man, I took math at Western. You know, they want to talk about their experience, you know, in the math program at Western. They may be incredibly proud of it, but it's not something they trumpet a lot.
No.
But athletes and fans of sport teams do. We're Western, we kick your ass. You know, we did it last year, we're doing it this year, and we're doing it again next year.
Yeah.
See, stop us.
Well, they've only had three undefeated seasons, so the last three anyway.
Anyway, they need to understand that when we have successful, thriving sport programs, it enhances the image of the university globally.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
I mean, the one thing that I knew as a coach of the University of Western Ontario Mustangs, when we went down east, they knew who we were.
Yeah, they knew
they were looking for us.
You know? Yeah, you were hated too.
I mean, they knew who we were.
Yeah, and when you went out west, I was with you in '98 when you went out to Saskatchewan, out to Saskatoon, your old stomping grounds.
Exactly.
And they hated you, you know, out there. Hey, you were from the east, and that didn't go over very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And B, you were those Mustangs, and they were gonna
I have memories of that game. There are lots of moments in the game, Pete, against Saskatchewan that I vividly recall. It was a great environment.
Yeah.
You know, great passion on both sides.
Yeah, it was.
And two great universities competing with one another, and we need that badly.
Yep.
We do.
Yeah, because there's just nothing like the old school spirit, as they say.
No. Pride in one's institution, pride in its academic programs, pride in its athletic programs, pride in its social life.
And as you said, Larry, I mean, it's the same at Queen's in Kingston, and the same it used to be in Toronto. U of T would come to London back in the Metrist era, and you couldn't get a ticket for love nor money.
Yeah.
I can remember I had a couple of tickets that I gave to a guy that oh my God, he closed his business to go to that game. He took his son to the game because you just couldn't get a ticket.
And you know what? We traveled well, and we'd go to we'd go to play wherever, whether it was the Maritimes or whether it was against the Bishops. I mean, we go to Bishops and 2 chartered aircraft fly in with fans to watch us play.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. We go to the Maritimes and 4 busloads of people show up to see us play from London.
Yeah.
We went to a playoff game against Laurier in their stadium, and we outnumbered their fans.
Yes, you did. I was probably there.
And their cheers in the last 3 minutes of that game were, I can remember like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
We need that energy. We need that enthusiasm. We need that.
You had some pretty fair talent too. I mean, Tyrone Williams went to the NFL's Dallas Cowboys. Tim Tyndale went to the Buffalo Bills.
David Sapunjas, one of the greatest receivers in the CFL history.
Yep.
I mean, hey, listen. The reason that I'm here talking as an ex-successful coach is because of my players.
Well, no.
I learned very quickly that I coached really a lot better when I had great players.
Yeah. Well, that's true, but there's someone's got to come up with the ideas, with the program, with the razzle dazzle of plays, the playbook.
Did you hear Did you hear Tampa Bay coach at the end of the game?
No.
Just kind of say, "Hey guys, I just watch." He said, "My coaches are awesome." He said, "My players are awesome." I'm a spectator. He's diminishing his role, but he's also acknowledging, the critical aspect of all. And I mean, I was, when I was inducted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame, I tried to talk about our coaches and our players because that's why I was there.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Yeah, but someone has to, you're downplaying yourself, but someone has to come up with the playbook, and that's not the players. They follow the playbook, but someone has to write it, and that was you.
Yeah, I think leadership there's a lot of components to leadership, and I think one of them is inspiring people, motivating people, helping people realize that they can be better than even they thought they could be, and beginning to realize that and be motivated to help it happen. And then people used to say to me, "Man, when you lose, it must be horrific, isn't it?" And it is. But if you've been in a locker room where you won a national championship and you've lost a national championship, the emotions are at the same level. They're just different ends of the continuum.
Yep.
And the passion that the people who play these games have is just amazing. And that's the thing that captivated me, is just passion that our players would bring to the field.
Yeah, they did too. Yeah.
I know it sounds like a silly question, Larry, but how excited are you to get back to a football stadium, hopefully here in a couple of months, and see another go around with some purple?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be so wonderful when we end this, this era of COVID, and we can return to the great things in our society, which basically are the interaction of people. Yeah. And our lives, and the interaction of our lives with other people, and with those events that make our life special and significant. And in my life, that's been sport. And so for me, bring it on. I can't wait to be there.
No, exactly.
I can't let you go without giving me one of your favorite Pete James stories, because I know everybody's got a Pete story or two. And the advantage is, and I preface this by saying, this is the podcast on the internet. This ain't radio. If it has some interesting elements to it, have at her.
I think my most vivid memories of Peter in the studio and editing our tapes. and trying to get a roll of the tape that somehow matched our script.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of moments where we weren't the perfectly harmonized team.
No. And picking the plays, I had my ideas what the big plays of the game were, and of course Larry had his, and but it came together. That show came together. I used to have Ronnie Lancaster. He watched it every week, and the quarterback with Hamilton Tiger Cats. He'd sit down, he'd sit there in Ancaster and watch us. And
I had a ton of feedback from that program. A ton of feedback.
Yeah.
And I think we had a really vibrant viewership.
Yeah, I think so.
And it was a great program, Pete. And even though kind of pulling together the cuts and the edits and getting it up there in a logical way was not the easiest thing to do.
No.
Boy,
you got to admit, I let you have the last word.
I thought it was wonderful. And you know what? The university loved it. They loved it because it presented a picture of the student athletes and the institute. And you remember, we used to always run a little feature.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Someone at the university, one of the critical people or important people or noticeable persons, and that was an awesome part of the whole experience.
There was another part.
Pete was like, he was our main man. He was our character man.
There was another part. A part of that show that
in London and in southwestern Ontario, there are very few, if any, media people of greater historical significance than Peter James.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That means I'm getting old,
we all are, Pete.
Well, it's been a great ride for me. I to get a little schmarmy if I can. I enjoyed my years with you very much so. We did that show together for 5 years or 4 years, and then we carried on with. I've done some games with Larry on the television, and we did some games before that on radio and whatever. It was just a fun time to be a journalist.
Your work in hockey was awesome.
Wow.
I used to listen in, and you always had this great ability to kind of capture the significant points. And by the way, speaking of how well you used to do that, I did not think that Jim Nantz and Tony Romo did an outstanding job on the Super Bowl. And I'm a big Tony Romo fan.
Yeah.
Really. Am I just alone, or did I just thought it was so much yabba.
Yeah, you got to know when to go in and when to shut up, and
they talked over a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Some significance. And so Tony Romo's pulling in what, $18 million a year. I think he thinks he's getting paid by the word.
I know I went to a conference once, and it was Jamie Campbell from Sportsnet. At the time, he was doing play-by-play for the Blue Jays, and to the same point, I remember him saying in that particular conference, he was like, he goes, the most important part of sports broadcasting is knowing when to shut up and get out of the way.
Yeah,
so that's why Pete and I started a podcast. I thought I'd just call it the Pete James Show, and I'll just put a small thing at the bottom, and Ryan will shut up. He keeps telling me I've got to be involved, but
well, you do too, because this is the young guy. He's in here. I mean, you won an award, didn't you? What was that award you won?
The Pete James Award in sports broadcasting.
Yeah, and when you were at Fanshawe.
When I was a pup.
Yeah,
but Ryan, you must be motivated by the history of, the sport journalist people in London.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you were to run down a listing of them in America, Canada, they're frontline, big time people.
Yeah, they are too. And
you mentioned Elliot Friedman, Dan Schulman, those
Dan Schulman does.
I could listen to Dan Schulman narrate a bottle of ketchup.
He's good, isn't he? Excellent.
Yeah,
that gift.
And not only the some of the females too, like Christine Simpson. She's from London, and so is Jennifer Hedger. She's from London.
Jennifer's had a long career. She's been great.
Yeah, she's been just great.
The other name for me, and it's a good friend of mine, I have to bring it up, is Carolyn Cameron from Sportsnet. She's a Western grad also, and working at Sportsnet and kind of making her way up the ranks over there as far as hosting. If you want, my favorite part, and we mentioned about personalities and people, especially the, usually, and I'm sure Larry, you have a million people walking up to you asking questions about, football. I mean, anytime I see you, I usually ask you about whatever it may be, but it's always the person's secondary sport interest or love. I remember a time somebody interviewing Connor McDavid and asked him about the Detroit Lions, and all of a sudden he lit up. When they talk about hockey, when they talk about their primary sport, it kind of becomes an avenue. When you talk about what the area of fandom, it kind of is a little bit of a different mentality. I know Carolyn is a big tennis fan. Larry, what's your second sport of love? Is it golf?
Oh yeah, golf's about the only thing I got left for me.
You told me once you like boxing, and I love boxing.
I like boxing. Yeah, boxing's been diminished, hasn't it? Though.
Yeah. Come on back, Mike Tyson, wherever you are.
Yeah.
Love him or hate him, you followed the sport when
he did do a comeback, and he's fighting Holyfield for the third time later this year. You can catch it on tape.
He didn't bite an ear either.
Not this time.
I was saying the other day that, in fact, when Hank Aaron passed on, and they showed a lot of the clips of Hank and when he hit his, record-breaking home run.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said to people, you know what? It was against the Los Angeles Dodgers when he hit his record-breaking home run. And as he circled the bases, the catcher for the Dodgers was a guy named Joe Ferguson,
mm-hmm.
who I played against for 2 years in Western Canada.
Oh, you did, eh?
He was up from. Every team out there was allowed 4 American imports, and Joe was one of them. And another one was a guy named Bob McClure.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob McClure, here's the story for you. Bob McClure was a pitching coach with the Boston Red Sox. He pitched in the major leagues for years and years and years, played against them for several years in Western Canada. And he had this thing he was only 18, 19 years old in Western Canada.
Yeah.
He would warm up to pitch with his jean jacket on, okay, which was a little unusual.
Yeah.
And so I went to watch the Boston Red Sox spring training camp. It's like 3 miles from where we live in Fort Myers in the wintertime. So I went out to one of the Red Sox practices, and I was standing by the dugout. The manager was kind of right there, and after a little while, I said to him, "Where's Bob McClure?" He said, "Oh, he's right over there. That's him over there." So he's out by the first base line. So I said, "Hey, McClure, you still wearing that jean jacket when you warm up?" He looks over and he walks over. He says, "Where the hell are you from?" I said, "I played against you for years when you were in Eston, Saskatchewan." "Oh my God." Now I think he's a pitching coach with the Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, that's it's been a great conversation, Larry. I could go on for hours and hours and hours, but
hey, I got to go to bed. It's almost 5.
Yeah, it is. It's Betty by time.
They don't put you in bed that early, Peter. Don't even me on that business. So. The same way. I know. I say after a couple more, maybe we do this again. Maybe when we get around the time that the university football is going to come back, we might maybe we'll do a preview show.
I remember
you do your research on every team, so you can give everybody the indication of what's going on this year.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not a sport journalist. I haven't been, but you know what? When I've gone up to the press box to work with Tom, I learned very quickly that you better have some stuff with you. You better bring some material that you've prepared in order to kind of manage this well. I mean, the one night we got caught with the lightning and thunderstorms.
Oh, right.
And we went on the air.
Yeah.
We had 2.5 hours of no football, and we had to have dialogue. And so, no one's better in the world than Tom at doing that. But, again, talking about Elliott, talking about the good ones, they're prepared. And it's not an easy job to be good in anything, and it's certainly not easy to be a great sports journalist. You need to put in the time and do the work and prepare. And I've learned that, and I do it.
Yeah, well, and it sounds that way too. You guys work. You really blend in together like salt and pepper.
Well, thank you, Pete. That's very nice coming from you.
Very good. Very good. Very good.
And if the sports information guy doesn't bring Larry his stats,
I don't tolerate that stuff.
I'm just gonna say I learned quickly in my early days that I got along with Larry extremely well, but it was always if I got that peek over the shoulder of
My players,
those stats yet.
my players used to call that the look.
The look.
I'm well aware of it.
Hey, your look was nothing like Metris. Your
right.
look was nothing like
You're right.
Metris, believe me.
Well, no, you're absolutely right, Pete.
I was with John a few times on the train of all places when one of his guys would be wandering back and he'd just have to look at him and the guy would stop and go back the other way. He was going somewhere where he shouldn't have been going. So Metris didn't have to say a word, just look at him.
And by the way, if I have a moment to tell you another story.
Sure.
I live in South Fort Myers. We have a place there, gated community on a golf course. And so playing golf is kind of what we do down there. So we have a group of guys play together 3 times a week. I have about 60, well, there's about 80 of us who kind of in and out of those 3 weeks. And so this one time I'm paired with this guy that I don't know, I haven't met him before. He's new to our collective group of 80 people. So the 4 of us show up on the first tee. This guy's from Chicago. He stands on the first tee and he sings me the Western fight song.
Oh, he does.
He does. He's an American from Chicago and he sings me the Western fight song.
Whoa. How did he learn that?
You know what? He looked it up. He used to travel. He was in business and he traveled and he'd been in Western through London, and had a sense of who it was and what was going on. And he took the time just kind of to learn the song. It was really cool. Really cool.
I remember, I'll close my portion here by, I spoke at Larry's retirement celebration. He and Judy were there with the kids. And I said, among other things, I said, on a beautiful fall afternoon, when there's a little bit of a nip in the air and there's a football game going on, Larry would be there. And well, you are. You weren't broadcasting the games then, but you are now. And as I said, you're doing a hell of a job with Tom.
Well, Tom's great, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He's good.
We did a game out of Ottawa, 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a night game. And unbeknownst to us, they put us on top of the press box.
Whoa.
So we had almost zero illumination. Wow. And so any notes that we had were extremely difficult to see. Tom, it was like nothing had happened. I mean, Tom called it like he had a script in front of his, numbers, names, people. He knew all of the people on both of the teams perfectly. It was, I was in awe. It was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, he was prepared.
Oh,
what did they put you up there for? That's ridiculous. I've been in the
visiting team.
Spacing is sometimes an issue.
That's worth another program all by itself.
Exactly.
Well, anyway, Larry, thanks a lot. Thank
you, guys. Yeah, it's really nice talking with you. It's nice. It's always nice to be remembered. I got to tell you, never gets tiring.